Oh man, we just lost Jim.
Oh,
we
come
literally
on.
just lost Jim, and I just hit record.
Oh, wow.
Another lightning bolt must hit the clock tower and sent him back to 1955 or something.
Yeah, we need everyone an update.
We'll find out. We'll
give everyone an update on what's going on. Welcome to Continuing Conversations. Our conversation today has been about weather in America, and Jim Johnson is in an area where a lightning bolt just knocked out his power. It took him about 20 minutes to get on, and just as I hit record, he
disappears
out of here. So we'll give him a moment to get restored. I think he might be out of power. This really
might not be good. I mean, yeah, the weather happens.
Yeah, his warp drive might be offline. Not that you need warp drive for power.
No. There are other reactors.
Fusion, fission, you can use solar panels or a solar sail like a certain Mars mission in another TV show. Which
is excellent. I'll plug it here. It gives me inspiration for Star Trek Adventures for All Mankind. That is some amazing plot seeds in there for sure.
It's got a very strong Trek pedigree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They even quote the original series in many episodes.
They do. Awesome. Makes me very happy. They do that. It's very cool. Well, for those of you who are just tuning in, and while we wait up here comes Jim again. Let's give him a chance to speak to us about where he got transported to. So Jim got transported somewhere, and now he's back.
He's back.
You're still muted.
No. Yeah, you're still muted, but that's okay. Yeah, right. There we go.
How many errors tonight? Obviously.
Was it another lightning bolt?
No, it's just it was a Zoom crash.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, and that's fine. This is actually so apropos to what we're talking about tonight, now that I'm thinking about it. Thank you, everyone who's tuned into Continuing Conversations, where, of course, we talk about everything Star Trek Adventures RPG. I'm Michael Dismuke, freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures RPG, and also a blogger on Continuing Missions, which is the #1 fan site for Star Trek Adventures RPG. And we're going to keep trying to keep that going. Now, we have a special array of people with us here today. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, talk about your power and Zoom situation, and then tell us why we've all assembled here today. And we'll introduce everyone else.
Sure thing. My name is Jim Johnson. I am the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, published by Modiphius Entertainment. And it is mid-July. I'm having a whole bunch of issues with my computer because of the rain that's going through the DC metro area. We got huge thunderstorms, huge rain, huge lightning and everything. So if I cut out in the middle of this, apologies. We'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, I've got Aaron Pollyea and Patrick Goodman here with me, along with Michael Dismuke. And we're going to talk all about Picard Season 1 crew pack tonight. So I want Aaron and Patrick to introduce themselves. So you're right below me, Patrick. So why don't you go ahead?
Well, I'm Patrick Goodman. I'm a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures and lifelong Trekkie, and I am ready to go tonight.
Okay, and I'm Aaron Pollyea. I'm also a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures. I'm your starship and technologies kind of guy. I like dealing with the science because that's one of those things I've always been passionate about. So here I am to talk about a lot of it.
Very good. We are in for it today. By the time this airs, Picard, the Picard character pack would have been out for about a month. I will ask a question to Jim right off the bat. I noticed that this pack came out the same week that July 9th was. And of course, we know that week, that day is 7 of 9 day in Star Trek. Was that on purpose? Because of course she's highlighted in the Picard Season 1 pack, or was that happy coincidence? You're on mute.
Mute.
It was absolutely 100% on purpose. Of course it was. Come on.
Okay,
everything we do is completely according to plan. You know that.
Kind of like your Zoom, it's kind of like your power situation, I'm sure.
Yes, it's all schemes within schemes. So no, absolutely, there was no plan. It was just that was the day. That was the earliest day we could release it. after it had been fully approved and finalized. So it were a happy coincidence.
Okay. Fantastic. For anyone who opens up the front page in the credits, they're going to see this is the group of people who actually worked on the writing. And so we're actually going to dig into it, talk a little bit about the show. We know this is about season 1 of Picard. We know right now it's already been through 2 seasons as we tape this, but we're going to get into the psychology of why we did what we did with a lot of the stats and the creation. I thought it'd be super cool if we start a little backwards, and instead of starting with the fleshy characters, even though there are artificial intelligence and androids in this, that we start with the ship this time. And since we're all familiar with the pack, hand it over to the person who did the write-up for the ship. They can talk about it, and then we can nail them with questions, because I have a bunch of questions about every page of this pack. So let's go ahead and start with Aaron. You were the one who had the pleasure of writing up the La Sirena. It's a Kaplan F-17 speed freighter.
Yes.
What was it like? What made this different from other ships you had to write up?
Well, it's different in the first place because it's a civilian vessel. I wanted to make it slightly different and interesting in the way that a civilian ship might be, not something that's produced for Starfleet and then put into civilian use, but this is, hey, right away, we're making this for people to use in a regular non-scientific exploration or defense sort of way. So I wanted to give it a feel that the other ships might not have. So I tried to give different information about where the ship might have been made. I wrote a bit about where the Kaplan speed freighters were manufactured and their history, but I know that's not in the pack. I tend to write a lot of stuff that doesn't get published because I tend to be verbose. But
it's okay though. I want to ask you a question before we get into the details of
sure.
it. Is this the first time in Star Trek where you had a non-Starfleet vessel, not talking about the Klingon bird of prey in Star Trek 4 Voyage Home, but is this the first time where there's been a non-Starfleet vessel that's featured in such a prominent way in a series?
Let me think about that. It might be. Yes, because most of the other, yes, all the other ships that are in the main series are Starfleet vessels. You could make the argument that Deep Space Nine and itself is not a Starfleet starbase, and it is the center of most of the action. Okay, but it's not really a starship; it's a starbase. It's sort of not the same thing. But yeah, as a ship that travels around, yes, I think it's. Yes, it probably is one of the first times besides the Klingon bird of prey that appears in Star Trek 4.
Well, I accept it. That way I can breathe as to why it didn't have LCARs, which threw me off at first. But
it sort of did. It's just that it's holograms because civilians want the flashiest type things that might not be the most efficient to fix when you're in Starfleet.
We're going to talk about that too, because I was like, Picard was sitting there having trouble with some of the controls. Why didn't he just holographically change it into the old style LCARs?
Maybe Rios didn't have that set up for the ship to be able to do that because he really preferred to actually use those holographic displays.
Yeah. All right, so break it down for us. What was your favorite part of doing the La Sirena? What stands out? What did you want us to notice that we may not have?
I was hoping that everyone would notice the strange place names that I actually put in. And it's because Michael Chabon, he wrote a book that you might know about in the history. He wrote a book and it had a lot of Yiddish in it. And the Yiddish ended up going into La Sirena as the Kaplan shipyards are at Hazelplatz, which is actually a Yiddish word for, it basically means the middle of nowhere. So this colony's name translates to the middle of nowhere. So I ended up putting in more Yiddish colony world names like Ergetsander, Andrisch, and Fargessen, which both means like nowhere else. And I forget where this is, great. It literally means forget. Wow. So I thought that was kind of funny to put in. I like putting in strange little nuggets like that. And as it's a speed freighter, I wanted to put in our favorite propulsion systems designer, Yo-Yo Dyne, because Yo-Yo Dyne, they have offices all across the Federation. There's even an office for Yoyodyne on Deep Space Nine.
Oh, wow. See, great trivia.
Yeah.
Great trivia. Anybody else have questions? Jump in because I have a bunch about this. Patrick, did you have a question?
No, I'm just laughing and enjoying the Yoyodyne references.
Okay, cool. One of the things that stood out, of course, about this Kaplan F-17, this particular one, is the advanced emergency crew holograms, which I was like, wow, this was so awesome when it came out. So talk to us, for those who maybe haven't seen Picard, maybe this will get them into it. What was that about? What was that feature of the ship?
Well, it stems from the emergency medical hologram program. So a normal Starship talent is, hey, you can have an emergency medical hologram come out. And there was some other stuff that was written in some of the other books. I think it might have been in the science division or command division that, hey, look, you can have an emergency command hologram, and it uses the same rules. But then Picard season 1 came out, and we suddenly have multiple crew holograms. So I needed to make an adjustment to a Starship talent that allowed a Starship to project multiple holographic crew members. And it made sense to me that if these crew members had to both be able to adapt to situations where they could pass any reasonable test for intelligence when talking to them, that this would take a lot of computer processing power. So if you want to have multiple crew out there, multiple holographic crew, simulated crew, the computer is going to run slower when you're running multiple iterations of the different program, because the computer is having to process all of this input and output with different personalities. So it made sense that the stat for computers goes down with the more holographic crew members you put on.
And let me tell you what was beautiful about this that worked into season 2. In season 2, we know that 7 of 9 is bequeathed the La Sirena. She has it. And of course, she's going to be the queen of efficiency. She's like, no, I just need one hologram. And she keeps up her computer power inputting, power output on the computer system. So I just thought, like, when I saw that, I was like, wow, that makes total sense with season 2 with what happened. Yeah, she
would end up programming the perfect hologram that can just do all the jobs and go from there. Yeah, so I thought that was really cool. Anything else, Patrick or Jim, you want to share just about the Kaplan before we start breaking down these characters?
I just want to, this is not meant to be a blanket apology, because I'm sure I'll do it again in the future, but I want to apologize to Aaron, because you put in such great detail into all of your ship descriptions, like the overview, the capabilities, and the talents. There's just so much great content that you put in there. And 80 times out of 100, there's not enough space on the page to keep it all, especially when we go into, mostly when we go into layout, because one page of layout like this, with this layout, it can only hold so much text, right? And it hurts me every time I have to cut, because like you have so much great stuff. It's like, I want to keep that because that's good role-playing stuff. I want to keep that because it's good role-playing stuff. It's just figuring out, like, tactically, what can I trim and still keep all the really cool stuff in, but and then cut stuff that's not too horribly critical. And it almost makes me think that we should think about doing some sort of like a special blog post or a special blog series or something that's like the cuts, right? Like behind the scenes stuff, or like the DVD extras on a
yes.
Here's the great Aaron cuts that didn't make it into the book, and here's the extra bits that you can throw in. Like
all my little comments to the side when I'm editing it. Oh, look, here's my idea. This is why it makes sense, or this is the reference that I'm trying to do. Yeah.
And with Jim or Modiphius permission, you can always host it on Continuing Missions. We'll be more than happy to have that. That's great content. That's great content.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'll figure out how to do it. That'd be fun.
Did you know what the original name of the La Sirena was when it was originally launched? I have it listed there. It's Shelna Meidel.
Yeah, what is that?
It means, it's Yiddish for beautiful girl.
Nice.
So I thought that, like, okay, that's a beautiful ship name. It's beautiful girl. It's just another one of those little Yiddish references that I try to put in, because
since we have all the experts here too, maybe you can answer me one thing, because this is one thing that I have a question about. I don't know the answer. The Kaplan, it's a speed freighter. It's a smaller ship. why is it scale 3? For those people who are into stats and the game, why scale 3?
It's not scale 3 for crew or size. It's scale 3 because civilians like bumping into things. It's literally there because it's made to be as rugged as possible, and people might not be as gentle or well trained when landing the ship on a planetary surface or docking at unregulated star bases. So it's literally there because it has really strong bulkheads.
Okay, and you do have in there redundant systems and rugged design as talents. Okay. So
yeah, that's kind of the reason why you want to say scale 3. It's not because of crew. You can't get like 3 support crew out of a ship that has, a captain and
holograms.
Holograms.
It's for making that dangerous spice run.
Yeah, it's pushing the ship way too hard and then bumping into a big rock in space accidentally. Like, hey, look, oops, I have big bumpers on the ship. It's okay, I can take that.
I think this is really cool because we know one of the next new releases is going to be Utopia Planitia, which is all about ships. And so for people listening to this, game masters and players who want to design their own ship, that's actually some pretty good tidbit for thinking about ship design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can have huge ships that might be scale 3. I mean, it just all depends on how trained the crew is, how rugged the ship is overall.
Love it. Yeah. Okay, good. Fantastic. All right. So that's some really good stuff. I'm going to pass it back to Jim now because, of course, you approach this a certain way as the project manager on this. So why don't you tell us, was there anything special that came up as you were granted this assignment by Modiphius and Paramount gave the okay on it? Anything interesting that you want to
note? Before I answer that question, I just want to, because we're finishing up with the Serenia. I just want to say this is one of the few products up to a point where we were able to. I was able to lean on my relationship with Thomas Morone or Moroni. I'm not sure how he pronounces his last name over at Star Trek Online, and he provided the render for the Serenia. We had some good assets from CBS that we could have used, but he had some really good ones from what they were using in the game. And I leaned on that relationship, which has been building up for a while now. And so I was happy to be able to include that in here. And you're going to see more of his stuff and Star Trek Online stuff in the Utopia Planitia book, which I'm super, super excited about. I'm so glad that we were able to get a wealth of material from him. So look forward to that coming up. So in answer to your question then, of course, we got the Discovery license and the Picard license about the same time, about a year and a half ago. And we knew we wanted to do some stuff with it. And the crew packs were like the easy, low-hanging fruit that just made sense to do because we've done them for everything else. But I wanted to evolve them a little bit. And we talked about this a little bit when we were doing the Discovery crew pack discussion a couple months ago, or whenever it was. A couple months ago. And I wanted to kind of like level up the crew packs a little bit, right? So like the previous ones had the characters and it had the station or it had the ship, depending on what it was. Sometimes there was some species information. And I thought, that's good information for a game master, but maybe we could make it even more useful for a game master and a group of players. So why not add some supporting characters, right? And just do something a little different. So in the spirit of you going kind of backwards through the pack, I thought we could talk about the supporting characters. This went through a couple different iterations. I think I actually had both, if I remember, I think it was both Michael and Patrick had you each write up a set of supporting characters, and there was like a lot of them to choose from. And I just kind of went through that, and I picked the 4 that made the most sense to me, just given the series and where things were and how it all shook out. Having looked at this again, though, I kind of think Riker was kind of a dumb choice and that's on me. I think I might have not included him only because it would have been more interesting to focus on newer characters.
I got to disagree purely for the value. Purely for the value, it was worth putting it in.
Got it. Although I will note, someone a fan of ours correctly pointed out that the William Riker supporting character description and stat block in here has too many points. So I would need to go in here and fix that. because I need to fix these stat blocks because there's too many points, which kind of doesn't make sense, because if you look at his character sheet in the TNG crew pack, and then you come to this, you're like, wait a minute, why is he a supporting character in this one and a full blown character in that one? So it is what it is.
Well, he came out of retirement. It's fair. He got a little rusty. I think it's fair.
So I guess I'll start with you, or I'll just direct this to you first, Patrick. Writing up the supporting characters, this is the first time we had done this in a crew pack. So what did you have any particular thoughts heading into it? Like, what was your perspectives on adding supporting characters to a crew pack, and what was your your process or your thought process about going into it?
I thought it was a great idea because there were a lot of characters that come and go that we wouldn't have had the chance to deal with. But I miss Larison Jaban. I was kind of disappointed that Murder Mom and Murder Dad didn't make it, but
that's what continuing missions for, Patrick.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we shall see. We'll see how the behind the scenes documentary goes, but I liked it. I thought it was a real good idea, and my basic approach to the ones that I wrote was just to try to make them as interesting a supporting character as I could, because some of you had such little information on, so it's just
leaving them wide open.
You had Dodge for one episode, so it's like, okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. I know I had worked on Dodge and her sister, and one of the things that I learned is keep it wide open so that next season I don't look like completely like I was. Yeah. I didn't have any angle where the character's going. So that's the challenge of doing, I think, supporting characters, right, Patrick? Is keep it wide open enough for that.
Yeah, not knowing, where, if anywhere, some of them were going to be going in the second season, because we had no idea what that was going to look like at the time.
Yeah, I will point out to people there's some really cool new focuses and talents in here. I know, for speaking of Dodge, the auto-enabled self-defense protocol. That was so fun to write. Yeah. Because right away her stats change in a fight. And I was like, oh, we haven't seen that yet in any kind of talent. And so this opened up a new realm of possibilities for people who are playing cyborgs or androids. It's like, oh, is there buried program? So there's some, little treasures, or even the case of Hugh. I don't think I wrote Hugh. You must have done that, Patrick.
I wrote. Yeah. Yeah, I wrote up Hugh.
I love the focus of Hope and First One, and the talent of First One. I was like, ooh, Hope as a focus. How do you envision people using that? That was my question.
Sort of like Pike cooking.
Okay.
It's one of those nebulous things. It's like, that he radiates that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost a different type of inspiration, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought
it's where he gets into a situation where things might seem bleak, but hey, look, man, I used to be a Borg. And I got out of that, and no one would think that you can get out of that. Nice. Look at me. Look at where I have gone to.
Yeah.
And he can be inspirational, and that's a Hope focus, when I'm inspiring or yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Me and Jim have talked on plenty of episodes about being really creative with focuses, because right when I saw that, it shifted everything about the character. It really did. And so I thought that was really nice how you watched the show and said, oh yeah, we're going there. I thought that was really cool. All right.
Good. Michael, any other, you wrote a couple of these too, so any other thoughts or perspectives from you as far as writing up supporting characters? Did you think they added value? What did you think about adding those into the crew pack?
Well, the hard part is, of course, 3 out of 4 of sorry, people, spoiler alert, 3 out of 4 of these die by the end of the series, right?
Yeah.
So that creates a challenge, but we had talked a lot during the Discovery campaign book about how time travel and other realities can create a lot of possibilities. And so there's really never a dead character. It's really up to the author, the writer, the GM to create the story. So I think it gives I think these are great for springboards or even character modeling. So I love it.
And there's nothing that says your campaign doesn't take place before the events of the series, and these characters can't appear there.
Right. Imagine. In fact, I was just watching the episode where Hugh first made the appearance in TNG season 5, and I was thinking to myself, how did he go from that, and then with the XBs getting all the way to what we see in Picard, which would be over 25 years later? That story alone. Imagine playing Hugh liberating Borg. Mm-hmm. That would be epic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
You figure that both Commodore O and Narissa, right? They had infiltrated Starfleet for probably years and years and years, and so they're both in Starfleet in the late 2380s, 2390s. And so if you set a game like some point after Lower Decks before Picard, like there's a lot of stuff going on in there that is alluded to in terms of like trying to rescue the Romulans from the supernova. And you could drop Commodore O and Narissa right into your campaign, and maybe your players don't realize that you're making the connection to Picard, or maybe they do realize that they're like, oh gosh, are we going to get into like this intrigue, kind of like this cat and mouse kind of intrigue game where maybe they catch whiff of something not right in Starfleet intelligence or Starfleet security, and they start investigating, and maybe Narissa visits them late at one night and slips a dagger in their back or something. Like there's all kinds of things you can do, especially because I think Picard tonally is so different from most of what we've seen in Star Trek before, right? It was much darker, much not adult, but just a very different tone from the more optimistic, positive view of the future.
Yeah, it's pretty bleak.
Yeah, it was pretty bleak. Yeah, there's just a lot of. When you get that early scene with the synthetics, destroying the Mars base, it's like what the heck is going on here? This is not Star Trek that I'm familiar with, but it's just different.
It corresponds to the vigilante campaigns, which we talk about in the Player's Guide. So this was really the first vigilante Star Trek show we're seeing, and it seems like it's going to be that way with Prodigy, kind of similar, and there's going to be more Picard coming. So it's a new style of play for Star Trek.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think part of you were talking what inspired me or what led me to develop it the way I developed it. Part of it, I think, somewhere in that time frame, like when we knew we were working on it, we got the sense that season 2 of Picard wasn't going to follow on from season 1, quite perfectly. It was going to be kind of like a different thing, and it certainly turned out to be a very different thing in hindsight. But I knew like it was going to be a challenge to figure out, like, do we do a Picard book, right? And what does that Picard book look like? And that's a challenge because like season 1 and season 2 are so different, and everything I'm hearing is that season 3 is going to be as different from the other two. So it's like, okay, so how do you hang a book together, coherently? So I'm still thinking about that. But part of the decision process then was like, okay, how much stuff can I pack into this crew pack that could make it useful for that period of time and give you lots of cool stuff to work with? So we made sure to put in the Serenia. Is like you can kit bash that into a freighter for your crew, your independent crew, or your Starfleet crew, or whatever you decide to do. Even a Klingon crew, maybe even a crew of Nausicaans on a F-17. That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, that could be the Kosa from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, exactly.
Ship.
Yep. And then the other thing I wanted to make sure we did, because I don't know, like I know what the production schedule is for the next 2 years, right? And I knew that the fans have been bugging me for a couple of years now to do a Romulan write-up, and we're going to segue into the Romulan write-up here for player characters. Even though we've been telling them for years, it's all in the core book, right? The attribute modifiers and both talents are in the core book. So you can play a Romulan character right out of the core book. but the fans wanted the one page sheet. It's like, okay, well, I'll give it to you, even though there's really no content in here that's new because it's all in the core book.
Well, let's talk about that.
They didn't believe me, darn it. They didn't believe me.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's go. In fact, we're going to keep with the trend, and we're going to keep going backwards through the entire book, because of course we should end up talking about Picard last. I mean, the star of the show, right? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that Romulan. It's next generation era. Is that significantly different than what we first see in TOS? Do you feel, Jim? This is 2399 too, right?
Well, no, and the more I think about it, those little tags about what era to play it in, I almost think those are kind of arbitrary at this point. I mean, now that the game has been out for 5.5, 6 years, I've been tempted to just delete it and just say, all eras of play and just leave it at that. But, we've got 6 years worth of history to play with. So I felt like I should keep it on there. But I think the intent there was that, unless you're playing a Romulan game, you should really think hard about whether you want a Romulan player character in your game until after the next gen era, where everything happens, like the supernova happens, Romulans are getting integrated with the Federation and with everything else, and then you get the Narissa character and you get the Laris, or not Laris. What was the guy's name? I can't remember. Narek. So it just felt like there were more opportunities to play Romulan player characters that weren't necessarily in the Romulan Navy, right? And so it just made sense to me at the time, right? But now, obviously, if you're a game master in a group of players who are going to play a Romulan campaign in the original series, then ignore it, right? It's not a big deal. It's not going to break anything. But Romulans be Romulans, right? From the original series all the way through TNG. So the two species talents, those aren't going to change. I mean, that's just is what it is. I mean, we even saw that in the last episode of Strange New Worlds, right? Even in an alternate timeline, they're still wary, and they have guile and they have cunning. So that hasn't really changed.
Yeah,
so.
that must make you feel happy that the book comes out, and then Strange New Worlds episode comes out first, then the book, and it kind of marries again, right? Means the writers are on the same page. Jim, I think you wrote the Romulan.
No, actually, Nathan did. I reached out to Nathan because he had already written most of the stuff for the core book, right? So I said, "Hey, Nathan, we need a 1-page Romulan." So he just kind of tweaked it and put it all together. I mean, obviously, I edited it, but
I think there's one paragraph I always say makes a story and a plot hook, and I think just the fact it makes mention of the Romulan Free State and then the Romulan Star Empire also is that creates a lot of stories there, like what's going on. And there has to be other factions besides the Romulan Free State too. And there's just a wealth of stories if someone really wants to play a Romulan-centric campaign.
Yeah, there's probably like Romulan expats as well that are in Federation space. There's probably like anarchist Romulans existing inside the former neutral zone, that kind of thing. That they might even have their own government, something like that.
Or even the Tal Shiar. We kind of saw what the Tal Shiar did, but did they break into multiple factions also? Kind of like the Obsidian Order with the Cardassians.
Yeah,
there's a lot of possibilities in there, right?
Yeah, and you've also got the Unificationists, right? The ones who broke away from Romulus and want to go find Spock and go figure out a way to reunite Vulcan and Romulus, and that could even string out into the 32nd century when they finally get Navarre together, right? And they finally reunite. So there's that whole thread that runs for
centuries.
Oh my goodness! You could do a Romulan campaign book built on weaving the stories together to get them to the 32nd century. Oh my goodness! You could do that. Yeah.
The challenge with that though is I know we got Discovery season 5 coming up here pretty soon. Who knows what's going to happen in that? Like they could do another soft reboot, and we could be going crazy. Who knows, right? But that's the tricky thing about doing products when you have live shows in production, is that you don't know what's going to happen. So like, do you take a chance and do you write ahead, or do you just write with what you know, given the shows that have already come out? And that's a tricky thing to deal with. So
well, anyone who's played in my RPG game, Aaron here does on a regular basis, knows that I took the liberty, because the Romulans are so mysterious, to go ahead and create the answers in our game. So if you're a game master or players, you have the opportunity to write. Don't wait for the show to write the story. Mm-hmm. Jump into it, because I know, Aaron, I don't know about you, but we like our story better, don't we?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I think it makes a lot more sense. I think it makes for a lot of really good drama that has linked into characters in our game. So it feels a lot more meaningful to us as players.
That's the point of Star Trek RPG, right? Write the story. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's start busting up these characters. What do you say, Jim? We'll head backwards. And
Yep. So last thing I'll say about the Romulan write-up is I had a couple art options. I could have gone with Narissa, which we went with, obviously. I also had a really good piece of art of Tomalak, and I was really tempted to use Tomalak, but I was like, he's a different era from this version of Picard, and it felt better to use Narissa. So as much as I wanted to kind of harken back to the old classic TNG era type of stuff and use Tomalak because he's such a great character, I went with Narissa instead to kind of represent the Romulans. So just the little Easter egg there for you.
Thanks.
It would have been nice to see Andreas.
Yeah, but I'm still holding out hope that we'll get him in another crew pack or another product at some point in the future. But we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just continue on backwards here. So Narek, let's talk about Narek. Narek.
Narek was he's got a lot of the typical Romulan shiftiness, but unlike almost any other Romulan we've ever seen, he's charming. He's got a completely different approach than most of the Tal Shiar, which is primarily let's break their legs and it's not that he can't use force. He's perfectly well trained. We saw that more than once, but it's like I said in one of his values, violence is not my first option, but it is an option.
Now, were you listening to LMFAO while you were writing this?
I was not.
I'm referencing the second value you listed on the sheet.
Oh,
I'm sexy and I know it.
Yeah, well, he's. I was not, but I'm sure it was stuck in my subconscious somewhere.
Well, as any good Tal Shiar or agent should be, he's not above being a honeypot for prospective targets. Makes sense to me. Yeah,
not at all, and that is in fact his preferred method of operation. Especially if it's a beautiful woman. But
what a fun character to play. I was just thinking between that and then seduction and backup plans and guile and cunning. I mean, this is a one-of-a-kind character that I haven't seen yet in any of our write-ups.
Well, that's one of the things that's so fun about writing him up was that he wasn't like any of the. You've never really seen a Romulan like this one. Most of them are all mustache twirling and Narissa. Yeah.
One adjustment I would have made, because I remind players, you can adjust it if you feel, hey, this, it's always open. I would have given him a higher con score. I mean, he was being pretty stealthy following the La Serena into town, and you gave him a con 2, or maybe a focus of shuttlecraft or something.
I bounced that back and forth, and it's like I can't even remember what my thought process is now because it's been close to a year, I think, since we wrote these. But
yeah. So that's just, I look at these things and I'm like, I would have gone, because I try to imagine it, but it's great. I probably would flip command and con the scores or something.
Yeah. Looking back, that's definitely something that I would consider doing. Would be flipping those two. But
yeah, cool, awesome, great character. Anybody else want to comment on Narek?
Yeah, I think the focuses of infiltration and surveillance actually work well for following people, even in a shuttlecraft. It's like, hey, look, I know how to surveil people, and I'm just gonna slip right in there afterwards. Like Flynn.
That makes total sense. I agree with that, because he didn't really get into a fight. He didn't do any kind of space battle or evasive maneuvers. He was just trailing them. Okay. There you go, Patrick.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron, for saving me.
It makes sense to me, you know.
I gotta say, Aaron pulled the yes and that's what we're all about here is yes and. So good use of yes and that shows players how to think. So that's great thinking there.
Works for me. And
all right, so let's go backwards. Next one, then. Who wants to talk about Elnor?
That's Patrick again.
That's another one of mine. And he was another one just because of the whole co-op Milot thing about absolute candor. A Romulan that doesn't lie, who will tell you what's on his mind all the time, day or nights, whether it's good for you or not. And he was another one, a Romulan honorable warrior, and he didn't have a father. My dad and I weren't ever really on. We loved each other. We were not necessarily on great terms all the time. So I mean, I understood not having a father around. I understood how he was hurt when Picard didn't come back for 15 years. So, I mean, it's very easy to get into that mind space where, you love someone, but you're really pissed off at them. That was very easy for me to embrace. And I see it was just fun. He was a lighter character among a bunch. Even though he was broken in a lot of different ways, he was a much lighter character than Rafi or Picard himself, or heck, just about anybody else in the show.
Out of everyone in the show, this is the person's career I wanted to follow. I mean, it's a groundbreaking character. It'll be the official first Romulan in Starfleet, right?
Yeah. He goes on to become the first fully Romulan cadet, which is kind of
that people are aware of.
That we're aware of.
Yeah.
But I mean, even O was half Vulcan, half human. I mean, she was a long-term plant. So I imagine she was. I imagine she went to the academy, but Elnor, actually, he was just. In a lot of ways, he's like Narek in that he was just not like the typical Romulans we had seen. He wasn't Tomalak. He wasn't Sela. He wasn't a number of other,
Hopefully he gets assigned as chief security officer on the USS Sojourner Truth.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's move on. Michael, I'm confident that you have a lot to say about Seven. So,
because I begged and cried, I begged you to always let me write Seven because she's my favorite Star Trek character. She is the next Spock, in my opinion. She's going to be just as important as Spock. In 50 years, we're going to look back and be like, "Yep, Seven was the crux of this new universe." So this was fun. I mean, one of the biggest things. I went back and looked at the Voyager crew pack initially, but then I had to count how many years. That was 2378 when we last saw her on TV. And now we're 21 years in the future. But she had dropped so many nuggets of what she had been through in that last 21 years. I was confident she was not the same person that we left her 2 decades ago. She was disenfranchised now, whereas I thought, and I think a lot of fans thought, oh, she's going to be a shoo-in for Starfleet science. I mean, she is a shoo-in. She's the biggest boon the Federation ever had, their best chance at fighting the Borg, but she goes off for whatever reason. And I really was dying to know what that conversation was like with Captain Janeway. Like, what's their relationship like? So I said, for her to be so far on the fringes, it had to really show in her stats. She really became an ultimate vigilante, and she has the skills to prove it. Some of the things I had to keep in mind too was the death of Icheb. So she had definitely had that scar on her, a lot of anger. And so I changed her to really Yeah, I've always felt like her command score is 1. I've always felt she's more of a lone, person, no matter where she's at anyways, ever since she gained her individuality. So some of the things I put in here was her expertise, of course, on the Borg Collective and search and rescue operations now to really make her a Fenris Ranger. I wanted her really working in evacuation. I pictured her thinking back to all the saves her and the Voyager crew had done, all the moral lessons that Janeway had taught her, and that she said, basically, I don't need the Federation to be successful. And the reason I think that's a good argument for 7 to 9, and you'll see it in her talents, they've assimilated so many species, the Borg. I refuse to believe they haven't assimilated a species that's better than the Federation. That's had it together better than the Federation and did things better. So she has this collective knowledge of doing things better. And we know her attitude and her arrogance and her perfectionism and her efficiency. I think she just said, let me do it my way. And so I put in the talents, assimilated species. So she can pick knowledge from species 8492 or 321. And in a game, one time during a game, she can go ahead and pool that knowledge and show. So I think that they did a disservice in Voyager that she didn't do that more. You claim to have absorbed thousands of species, and I don't see you pulling out this trivia all day long. So I really wanted to give players a chance to push that and have fun with that and just make up a species and make up a focus to get yourself out of a jam every episode. I just wanted to push her in that. And then one of my favorite episodes with her is, of course, fighting the Rock. So I had it though in martial arts Tsunkatsu. And the entire time as I was watching the show and I was aware I'd have to do this write-up, I wasn't going to put it in initially. I said, unless I see her kick butt. And that final episode, she got into it and kicked butt. And I was like, okay, she still remembers her Tsukatsu maneuvers. So again, there's just so much backstory on this character. One page will never do it all. And if anyone ever needs me to write a novel on 7 of 9, I could write a comic series that would blow people's minds at how she breaks down the Federation. Yeah, I really could.
Nice. Patrick, Aaron, any thoughts on 7 before we continue on?
I do, because I also love 7, believe it or not, but not as much as Michael. I would have not used assimilated species as the name for that talent. I would have used collective memory.
Ooh, that is good.
And it's just because assimilated species tends to be a little more aggressive towards being Borg rather than what 7 is now, which is that's in her past, but she still has the collective memory of it.
Everyone at home with the PDF editable, just scratch off assimilated species and the collected knowledge, because I do agree with that.
Collective memory, yeah.
Collective memory. Thank you. Collective memory.
Well, I could change that easily enough if you really want to.
Let's do it. Let's just for fun.
You said collective memory?
Yeah. I love that. Ooh, that's really good. All right. She's a kick butt character. Let's move on.
She sure is.
I could do a whole episode on 7 of 9.
All right, let's move on to Dr. Soji Asha.
All right. That was mine. What I want people to notice in this one is the talents again. So I focused on new ones that had never been in the book before. So one was auto-enabled self-defense protocol. We already talked about that. So she'd have what her twin sister has, and we saw her in action doing that. But the next one was biological mimicry. And it's not, I want to impress to players and to game masters, you'll notice there's no bonus anywhere in this. It doesn't say +1 or spin a momentum in this. It's just showing that part of her talent is that she's stronger, faster, she can hear better, she has senses. And I didn't think that putting android in traits would really help a player expand on, you're dealing with somebody who is the bionic woman.
Yeah, I was going to say she's the 6 million credit woman.
Yeah. And I think that could play into that, is that use talent sometimes just to create the character, especially because it's a boon what she could do. If all of a sudden you're chasing Romulans and it's a 3-story building, she can jump and make the jump. And that's something that other characters couldn't do. So that's a talent.
Yeah, that when you saw Dodge do that in the first episode, it's like,
Yeah, and
So-
I did it. Yeah, you know how where it hit me, and I wrote it in the blog initially. I got you. I got you.
I was just
Humans happen. So what got me is that, and I wrote this in the blog, that this was in my opinion, the first Star Trek where so many people had superpowers. A superpower. They had something they could do that nobody else could do, and I know a lot of people like playing superhero RPG, and in Star Trek, we have a whole universe. So if you really want to go there, you don't necessarily need to have power stats. You could make it a special talent, whether it's a cybernetic thing, if it's biological memory, if you have a cloaking ability to cloak, that could become a talent that you could wrap into the game. There are superpowers, maybe not Superman, but superpowers. So that was my thinking behind that, Jim.
Very nice. Cool. Yeah. Aaron, Patrick, any other thoughts on Asha, or I guess Soji in this case?
Yeah,
Maybe I would have said, instead of Data's daughter, I would have said like daughter of Soong, because like the Soong type androids might be different than synthetic, but
I did it because of the painting. I get it. Yeah. I did it because of the painting. And I felt her personality in the end was trying to get her to be more like Data than Soong's attitude.
Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. That was fun.
Okay, cool.
I got the next one too.
Yeah, we'll move on to Dr. Agnes Girardi.
She's interesting. I mean, I'll point out what I liked about writing her. Her focus is, again, biology, neurology, opera, research and development, synthetic life, theoretical cybernetics, and that runs into her value, which she said, I'm the Earth's leading expert on synthetic life. So, and I think we all know where this character evolves to. It just makes sense as a character. So really interesting, totally different character than I think we've ever seen in Star Trek before.
Yeah.
But really enjoyed writing her.
Yeah, and we should probably note that we wrote this well before season 2 came out. We had, I mean, I don't think anybody had any, well, I mean, there were plenty of people in production who knew, but like the average fan, including us, we had no idea where season 2 was going. And
Zero.
I don't think any of us could have predicted what was going to happen to her in season 2. You know,
Right.
No spoilers. But I think Michael, I think you must have been prophetic to put in these focuses because you know.
Well, let me show you how a player can use this character. I think sometimes what happens is players look at their sheet and they don't see how it all works together to blend. So if she's dealing with a synthetic life form like the Borg Queen, which we see in season 2, not only can she use her value of I'm the Earth's leading expert on synthetic life, you know, to maybe spin and get those 2 instant successes on a roll, but you can put her, if she's fighting against the Borg Queen, she's probably doing control plus engineering, which is a 15 score. She can drop into that synthetic life. And then if you go to her talents, if she's attempting a task that involves synthetic life form, she adds a bonus D20. And if she's dealt with it before, she's a quick study. And she has testing a theory. She, without spending any additional momentum, she could have a 4D20 hand. And that's how she got the Borg Queen.
Theoretical cybernetics is also important for developing new cybernetic implants that a Borg might be generating from their nanites.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So to your point, Jim, when I was watching season 2, I was like, yes, you know, because it shows she's bad. She's awesome. So I was really happy it turned out like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's always nice when things work out, right? And then if it doesn't work out, we can always fix it in editing later.
Fix it in post.
Yeah, exactly. Great. Let's move on to Rafi then. Rafi Musiker.
Rafi Musiker. And I don't know if I ever. Rafi was a gift. Because we talk a lot about representation, and people going, well, Patrick, you're all over Star Trek. You're a cis white middle-aged white dude. I'm also an alcoholic. I mean, I've been sober for 20 years plus, but I've been where Rafi was with her son. I've been where Rafi's son was too. Because dad was also an alcoholic. I mean, I really, really understood about Rafi, and I was so I mean, I don't know if I ever said thank you, Jim, but thank you, because like I say, working on this one was a gift, because all the characters are broken. That was one, I touched on that in the blog post that I did, but they're all broken in some way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. But Rafi was in pieces, and she's been trying to put those pieces back together for, ever since she lost her clearance 15 years ago after the Mars attacks. And I mean, I knew what that was like. I knew what it's like to hit rock bottom. That's, one impossible thing at a time is just a variation on one day at a time.
Nice.
And she spends the entire season, trying to fix things with Picard, with her son, and she doesn't always succeed, but she's making the effort, which is, where a lot of her values came. And we were talking, someone was talking about it online, how, how paranoid she is, and how all her talents tend to stick it to the GM, because she can get so much information going, well, did I make her paranoid enough?
One of the things I like about it too, that you wrote in there, and I think we always talk about player safety here, you have the trait of addict in there. And just, based off what you were just saying, Patrick, what advice, do we want to give people, if you're a player and you pick up this character sheet kind of nonchalantly, but who are we playing with? What's some advice maybe you would give about player safety and consent?
Find out, if you're the GM, ask the player that picks up the sheet, are you comfortable playing into this aspect of her life? Because it's not, it can be flavor text if you're not comfortable playing into it. Whereas, if you're comfortable, I mean, I would be able to pick her up and just run with it, but it can be. Excuse me. Go ahead.
No, and I wanted to add too. But think about, if you picked it up, if I'm not playing the character, but I'm playing in the same group with you, I still have to be sensitive to certain things in reacting to it. Right. This is a discussion a group should probably have.
That is absolutely something, because when I was drinking, I could be a real jerk. So, I mean, you really want to be careful with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that to me was such a touchstone of who her character was, who she is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you do it right in a game, we've had, all of us have a lot of experience with making sure to check with the group before having certain subjects. When you do it right, but always check, never assume. But when you do it right, it makes the best RPG experience. It makes us more empathetic to others too. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely something you'd want to talk to everybody about at a session 0, right? Or even in the middle of it, if like in the middle of the campaign, if you decide that you want to take your character in a different direction tonally, just check in with your group, check in with your game master, and then figure out like what level do you want to play it at, right? You could go like really, really deep, like Patrick was saying, and do the really hard dark stuff, or you can kind of like not to trivialize it, but you can kind of have it at a different level where maybe she is an addict, but you play it off, or you don't go too deep into the detail and it's just present, and it's there, right?
Yeah.
But definitely.
I think to your point to that, Jim, too, attic there is not a negative all the time. We got to remember that traits can be used both negatively and positively in the game. And so you could become an inspiration to someone who's dealing with it in the game, also a different type of addiction. So just make sure players understand that attic is not a negative. It can be used as a very powerful life learning lesson. So get really creative with that, but be sensitive to the group, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure.
Idle curiosity, Jim. When you were assigning these to Michael and me, what was your thought process on who was going to do what character?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. I begged for 7. I said I don't care who you.
That much is given. I understand that.
I honestly don't remember. I mean, it's been over a year now.
Yeah,
did it? I think I had a sheet of paper. I wrote down all the characters that were in the show, of course, all the major characters, all the supporting characters that I thought made sense. And the only one I knew for sure is that I knew that Michael wanted to do 7. So that was obviously in the Michael column. and then I just kind of like divided up everybody else, kind of like in terms of like, okay, how much weight did they carry in the series, right? Like, Picard obviously was the heavy. Agnes had some stuff to do. Rafi had some stuff to do, and I just tried to balance it out between the two of you. I don't think I picked any particular favorites other than to say, Michael really campaigned for 7, and I would never hear the end of it.
We gave 7 to Patrick, Michael. It's
the whole blog was shut down. I would never.
Yeah, there was no special sauce. I wasn't throwing a dart at the dartboard. I wasn't rolling dice or anything. It was just pure like gut feeling of like, okay, who can probably do this well? And I mean, not even that, because I know you're both really good writers. So I wasn't worried about what you were going to deliver. So it was, just me coming up with the list.
I think it worked out perfectly.
It worked out. I was just curious if there was a specific process or if it was just something.
Based on what you just said, though, honestly, I'm eager to play the 2K. What you said about Eleanor and what you said about Rafi, I'm like, wow, these are deep characters. I'm going to appreciate them a little bit more.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe that's part of it, right? Maybe there's that unconscious wavelength that led me to assign Rafi and Eleanor to you, and they both ended up having some personal relevance to you, right? So like, I want to say you're welcome that I gave them to you, but like it wasn't intentional. It was just the way it worked out. And again, we were talking about happy coincidences earlier in the show, and I guess that's maybe, I mean, not happy necessarily, because there's some hard stuff tied into it, but just coincidence, and the cosmic unconscious was at work there probably.
Cool.
All right, so that being said, let's jump over to this character. I have such mixed feelings about this character. Rios, Chris Rios.
Okay, good. This is the final character that I had the privilege of doing in the pack. Really interesting. Looking back on his character over 2 seasons now, really the fallen hero in the sense he went through some really traumatic stuff, and I tried to capture that in the narrative there. Having witnessed a crime, a Starfleet sanctioned crime, that's huge. I'm trying to think if any other first officer ever saw that. Like if Chakotay had to go through that, or if Riker had to go through that, how they would have reacted. I think that
Riker did, yeah. Not to the level that Rios did, but
this was huge, and he resolved it. Riker could resolve it too. This had no resolve for so many years that this guy was just slow baking Starfleet, but at heart he's a great officer. Some of the things that I liked about him was the fact that he was pulling a Han Solo, for lack of a better word, but it's like, whoa, this is like the very first, Han Solo level character. And so I enjoyed giving him criminal organizations as a focus. And, he's an expert on his ship. That's his aluminum something, if you catch that reference. And soccer. I wouldn't have given him soccer unless he uses a weapon in the last episode. Then I was like, okay, that was kind of fun. Okay, he's beyond, just just batting it around. I thought what's cool, Aaron, is without knowing what you were doing with the La Serena and the power penalty on the computers, or the processing penalty on the computers, that I gave him emergency holographic team as an advantage. So when he does use it, at least you get that 1 point bonus for using them. So that could balance things out when playing the character, which I thought was cool. I have to say the hardest part, and I want all of your input on it, and really, I don't know why I didn't go to Aaron for this, in fact, because you're technology man for Star Trek Adventures, that field replicator. What was your take on that?
My take on it is that I didn't like it as a narrative device because it's kind of like a magic wand.
Yeah.
It just solves the problem that you don't really know what the solution is. You just imagine that there is a solution and it's there.
Yeah.
So I didn't like it. I'll be honest about it. But as a talent, I guess it makes sense that if he has knowledge of using, like, let's just say ship's replicators, that he generally knows his ship very well. He's been on Starfleet vessels a whole lot, and most of the technology that the Federation would be manufacturing, both for Starfleet and the civilian sectors, would be fairly well standardized across most shipyards. So him just going, hey, something's broken. I have a lot of emergency repair damage control training through Starfleet. My whole thing is, if something's broke, I can generally fix it, and I generally know what the device is that I need to build to fix it.
Yeah.
So that's fine. I just
let that pass.
I just wouldn't have tied it to the magic wand. I would have just said, hey, this guy's great at actually designing things on the fly to fix other things, and it gives him an advantage.
But then they made such a big deal out of the field replicator, and then Picard used it to, I don't know how they hooked it up to the ship to create the holographic. I mean, there was all this stuff. It was such a huge device. And
I'm not sure how it was able to access as much power as it needed to generate dozens of fully interacting La Serenas running around.
But Jim, I don't know how you let that pass. I remember looking, I was like, this is going to get kicked back. But was there certain reasoning where you're like, yeah, that flies?
Why? Which one flies?
The field replicator talent, as a talent, because I almost put it under equipment. But I said, well, it's such a huge deal for.
I thought it was fine. I mean, you're talking to the guy, and this I probably shouldn't admit this, right? But like, I'm not a mechanics guy, right? I don't I care about the mechanics, and as long as they work in the game. But like, if it's a piece of talent or a piece of equipment, like as a game master, I don't care. It's a cool thing to do, so make use of it in the game. Go for it. And maybe Nathan might have made it a piece of equipment instead of a talent. And certain players would probably be really precious about what talent slots they're using for certain things. But like as a role-playing tool and for making the character unique and interesting, I totally left it in because I was like, yeah, this is what he was doing at least in the last episode or two of it. So I left it because I didn't think it was taking anything away from it. And so when I get into that kind of a situation, 99 times out of 100, I'll err on the side of siding with the writer and knowing that you had something in your head. Like I may reach out to you and ask you a question, but otherwise I'll take it as it is and say, okay, you know what, this writer knows what he's doing or she's doing, and or they're doing whatever, and just go with it. So I didn't have a problem with it, and Nathan, I think pretty sure I sent this to Nathan just for his quick glance at it because he's such a good mechanics person, and he lives and breathes Star Trek even though he's not actively working on the line like he did before, and he didn't have any comments on it. So I was like, you know what, I'm fine with it. So let's go.
In my mind, I think that this was the early evolution of what we see in the 32nd century of programmable matter. I think this was maybe a small first application of it, because then by the time we get to the 32nd century, they're strapping nacelles with programmable matter. So I don't know. I don't know. They're doing whatever the heck they want to do in the 32nd century.
Yeah, it's all magic.
It makes sense as a talent. It makes sense as a talent, something like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you get into something when it's cool and interesting and it's very character specific, I'm all over that because the more unique you can make these characters. Like, I mean, there's so much. This toolbox is so huge, and there's so much you can do to play with it. Especially when you learn the system and you can start playing in the middle ground and create new stuff. I mean, and the other thing, Michael, now that I'm thinking about it, and you're making me go down into the weeds here, this is just another way of showing how flexible the system is, right? Where you can create a thing. And it's like, is it a talent? Is it a piece of equipment? Is it part of a character trait? Like, there's some wiggle room here. And I think even Patrick, way back a couple of years ago, we had a discussion on social media somewhere. I mean, not necessarily you and me, but like with fans, we were talking. What the heck were we talking? We were talking about like, oh gosh, now I'm gonna have to my brain. It was like we were talking about like, is this a species? Like, is this a talent or is it part of the species trait? Right? Is it something that they can innately do that should actually be part of the species trait, or is it a dedicated talent that they have to buy? And I was like, well, you could go a couple different directions with it. And, now honestly, I can't remember what the heck it was. Like maybe the Shroud talent for the Jem'Hadar or the Shroud talent for the...
That sounds familiar.
Jim, we had a similar discussion about ships with that, whether something is just a trait or a talent, like landing on a planet.
Right. Oh, yeah, that was a recent conversation we have about because of the Utopia Planitia book. Yeah. But it came up a couple times prior to that, too. And I think... on the one hand, my dodge is like, well, go with what feels right for you. but that's the truth because, Nathan made the system so flexible that any given game master and group are going to approach it a little differently. And maybe they'll say, well, you know what, the EMH, that doesn't need to be a talent. That's just part of the ship. That's just part of the time frame that ship is in. Don't waste a talent slot on that when I can just give it to you and say, okay, yeah, you have the image. What do you need a talent for? So it's just showing you like, hey, game masters and players, like this system is super, super flexible. And if you change something from a talent to a trait or, a piece of equipment to a talent, like you're not going to break the system. This isn't like certain role-playing games where you pick an extra feat and then like all the math breaks down, right?
Right.
That's an extreme example.
I want to say to you, we let the narrative in our game, we let the narrative drive it. And there's been times where the narrative drove like, we're switching a talent right now, or we're changing a focus. And that's okay, especially if you're doing a narrative-driven game. In this case, first, again, we don't see the field replicator again at all in season 2. All kinds of things were broken. They didn't use it once. So they narratively took it out. So
Seven threw it out the airlock when she turned off all the other holograms.
Yeah, exactly. So good points.
All right. Well, let's jump over to
let's jump over the Admiral.
The show, the main focus of the show, the namesake of the show, John.
JL.
John.
Yeah.
John Luck Picard.
John Luck Picard here.
All right, Aaron, JL. And I was like, every time I heard it, I will admit, like, I tried really hard to like the series, but like the instant I heard JL, I just got this like, little mental twitch. I was like, that doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Eye twitching time. Yeah.
Yeah, because this wasn't daunting at all.
Talk to us about your nerves. Yeah.
The nerves that started fraying around the edges. Like, oh, I've got to do Picard in his own show. Oh my goodness. As we were talking about with Rafi, did I make her paranoid enough? I think a lot of this season of this first season was Picard dealing with his mortality because he's told his life expectancy is somewhat foreshortened, and cleaning up a lot of the messes he left. There's a scene when he went and asked Admiral Clancy for a ship, and she's going, the sheer bleeping hubris. And I'm sitting there going, she's not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so he's like, did I make Jean-Luc arrogant enough? And did I manage to find a way to get him past it? Most of his values are getting past, but one of his big ones is, I didn't leave Starfleet. Starfleet left me. I mean, he had three things he was dealing with. He was dealing with grief because, 20 years later, he never got a chance to say goodbye to Data. When my dad died, I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to him. We were not speaking at the time.
Mm.
So, I mean, I understood that regret. I just had to make things up. I've never felt that kind of tug of mortality. I'll never be, I may never pass this way again. I've never really had to deal with that personally, but the arrogance and the hubris. He had to tear himself down a lot to rebuild himself before the end of the series, the end of the season, and I understood a lot of that. I went and he had become very familiar with the Romulans, which is why I gave him the Romulan. The Romulan customs focus, and he was, I gave him reassuring as a talent because the man can give a reassuring speech.
And he bound together. We have to remember he's the glue of all the vigilantes. I mean, he brought them together, right?
Yeah. He's,
He's the glue that stuck a lot of crews together for a long time. That's why you have the Doctor from the Stargazer still coming back to see him after all this time. Why, like, all these people from his past are hanging around the vineyard. Clearly, the man has reassured enough people themselves that makes sense. And yes, he is the glue for everyone.
Yeah. And where does one? I mean, you raise a good question, Patrick. What do you have to do in Starfleet to get a voice? That's one of the things I remember in the scene where he's like, yeah, give me a ship, right? They never gave Captain Kirk a ship. He had to steal it, right? So at what point do you think you're owed something by Starfleet? Are you really the only captain out there doing amazing things? Or is that just the life of a Starfleet captain? Yeah.
Well, I think it's the life of the hero captains for sure. But I was watching that, and she goes off on him, especially after that interview, which was ill-conceived. And the Admiral goes off on him and going, I'm going to give her that one, especially when he goes, if you think my being an admiral is going to be too much of a show, I will accept demotion to captain. I was like, really? How generous of you.
I'm with you, Patrick. No, I agree that she felt like she was in the right on that, and that Jean-Luc was actually kind of off base with his request. But that being said, it wouldn't be that hard to get a hold of a starship. Like, civilian ships are everywhere. You can get a shuttlecraft. It's not that hard.
Or one. I mean, if we're going to go there, and if somebody, and this is good, me and Jim have talked about this before. If some of you think you had a better idea of how this could have worked out, this is your chance to role play it with this character guide. Because what I would have done if I was him, I would have called up my buddies. I would have called up Worf or Captain LaForge and been like, I need a favor. And that never happened. He just went right into Starfleet and said, give me a ship. Give me a crew that might die under my agent command. It's like that was hubris. That definitely was. Mm-hmm. So now you get a chance, if you're a player and game master, take it from there. Take it where he maybe makes a different decision on how to attack this and run the same scenarios and see how it would turn out. That'd be fantastic to hear about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think you wrote him well, though, Patrick. I really
thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I'll just say, as an Easter egg for everybody, from the introduction, if in case none of you caught it, actually no, it's in there, so never mind. But if you didn't notice, in all the introductions too, they're tweaked to be in the voice of Commander O. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like her dossier on these characters that she can't believe got together. I sat there when I was doing the introduction. This is something that Tal Shiar could never have predicted in all their simulations with all their intelligence. They could never have guessed that Picard was going to pull together this ragtag vigilante group to mess up their plans. And that's the way I tackled that from her perspective.
Yeah, if I had known you were going to be writing all the other stuff from her, I'd have slanted I would have slanted the character paragraphs a little bit to aid in that.
We worked them. I think Jim and I tweaked them a little bit just to make sure.
Oh yeah,
a little bit. Yeah.
All right, Jim. Anything else as we close out?
Let's see what else. I think the only other key thing to note is that this was an opportunity for us to do a new fresh layout design. We knew that Picard, season 1 was a group of ragtag characters, not Starfleet, not Klingon, not anything that we've seen before really in the show, at least as a focal group. And knowing that it was in the 2399 heading into the 25th century here, it was an opportunity to do something different because the LCARS layout for the TNG series didn't make sense. TOS, Enterprise, the other layouts that we've already done just didn't make sense for this one. And it worked out that, again, this is a year ago. It worked out that the graphics team, design team at Modiphius had space in the schedule. So I was like, and I got to them early enough, which is important. I got to them early enough and said, hey, we're working on this crew pack for Picard. I'd like a fresh layout design with a white background and dark text. And then we might possibly use this in a book at some point. Assuming we do decide to do a full-blown Picard book, I'm sure we'll bring it back. But with season 3 of Picard coming, who knows what that's going to look like? I don't know if we'll go back to the LCARS for that, or if we'll do something different. We'll just have to see. But at least for this particular product,
those are going to be some fun character write-ups.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know what to expect, but I know I'm confident we'll do a season 2 pack here at some point. I need to talk to the folks at Modiphius about what the timing on that looks like, but I certainly want to do it. I don't know that we'll definitely do it, but I certainly want to, just because the season 2 was interesting and different, and it'll be interesting to see how we take these characters and kind of evolve them to the next point. So I appreciate the layout design that Chris Webb put together. It was my first time working with him directly. He does a lot of great stuff for Modiphius, and he delivered on this one, which I'm really grateful for. So that, other than that, thanks to Thomas over at Star Trek Online for the render of the La Sirena, and also thanks to Joseph Russo over at Star Trek Timelines. We've been working with him for almost 6 years now, almost from the beginning. All the character art in these packs are from Star Trek Timelines. So if you play the Star Trek Timelines game, this artwork will be very familiar to you. I'm grateful that we have relationships with some of the other Star Trek licensees, and the fans notice. Like I get comments every now and then from fans who appreciate the fact that their art is in our stuff, and they can see connectivity among the different games and among the different licensees. So expect to see more of that in the future. Especially as I continue to build relationships and find more licensees to work with. So hopefully
the art is glorious.
Yeah, their art, and this is no slight on them because their art's been good. But like if you look at the crew packs for the original series and next gen, their artists have gotten better and better and better over the years, to where like the art in here is just really, really solid. Like all these characters are really, really good. And they've just gotten better over the years, which I appreciate because we get to use their art, and I'm grateful for Joe and that relationship. So thanks to Joseph, thanks to everybody at Star Trek Timelines and Star Trek Online. And
my dream is always to also print these out and do standout cutouts at some point for all of these, which would be super cool because the art.
Put them on little popsicle sticks.
Yeah. Exactly. Wouldn't that be cool?
Little puppet show. Yeah.
Yeah. So per tradition, we want to shout out some game shops too. So today I'm going to shout out Game Castle in Austin, Texas. That came from Robert Shank. And then Michael Rosen wanted to shout out the Battle Standard, East Windsor, Connecticut. So we always love giving love to brick and mortars just because of everything that they do to support the games. And I don't care how long you play. And if you play virtually, most of us can't ever walk by a game shop. We got to go in and smell the books and touch them. So we appreciate you putting those businesses together for us. Aaron, do you want to give a shout out? And Patrick, do you want to give a shout out too to maybe your favorite constabulatory?
Yeah, Summit Comic and Games in Lansing. That's the one I always go to. It's right downtown.
Cool. Patrick?
Yeah. The Adventurers Guild in Amarillo, Texas. Last time I looked, they still had a limited edition Klingon core book on their shelf. So
valuable. Very cool. All right. Well, everybody, I mean, this is great to be able to have everybody get together who worked on this, the writing of this book to get Picard. I like it when a product comes out. It makes me appreciate the show even more watching it the next time. So Jim, good job on that. Anything you want to say to take us out?
No, just thank you all for joining me on this project. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of you, and I'll be coming to you all again soon, I'm sure, for more stuff. And thanks to the fans. We never thank the fans enough, because without the fans, we wouldn't be doing this heading into year 6 now. So thanks for your support, and look forward to a whole bunch of cool products coming up here in the near future. The four major products that are on my plate right now are coming together really, really well, and I've got a whole swath of smaller projects in the works. And I just posted, and this is just a teaser. I just posted 16 new product suggestions to the Modiphius boards, in internal development boards. So if I can get all 16 of those greenlit, there'll be plenty more work to come for next year too. So we'll see what happens. I have a meeting tomorrow. So.
Awesome.
See if I can convince them.
We'll pray for you.
Yeah, thanks.
Very good.
But,
all right, everyone.
Thanks to the fans.
All right, thank you everyone for tuning in to another continuing conversation. Thank our guests, IDIC. See you later.
Long and prosper. Be safe. Be well. We'll talk to you next time.